All right. What's up, peoples? I'm not even gonna play no music today because yes. Welcome everybody. Welcome to the Even People Show. This is a good show for y'all tonight. I can't wait to get into the show we have tonight. We're definitely gonna have some fun with it. Let me see if I can find my banner and get it going here. All right, so my guest tonight is me and a whole host of y'all. I want to take time out before I even go any further to highlight some folks over there in the United Arab Emirates. I think that country is called. YouTube and Facebook tell me I got some viewers over there and they stay diligent to the thing. So big up yourself, United Arab Emirates. I don't even know who I have. I know one person I have in the Arab Emirates. But him apparently jog on some of my friends to the Even People Show, and I appreciate you, sir. I appreciate you. Make sure you subscribe to the Martin Matthews Project on YouTube so we can build up the thing, right? All right, so check this. Tonight show, I have some apologies to give. I'm gonna give them here in a minute. Tanasha, bless up yourself, Tanasha. You're early like bird. So the show tonight, and I'm gonna pause again. If this is your first time checking into the Evening People Show, welcome. On this show, most time I interview guests. Tonight I don't have a guest. We talk about them. We talk about my book. We read some poetry. The poetry usually comes from my book back there called Love, Life, Confrontation, Expression, Selections from the Chronicles of a Black Man. It's a book of poetry. I think it's called intellectually riveting poetry is the kind of poetry that it is. And if you don't know what that is, check it out. Fontana Pharmacies in Jamaica and worldwide on Amazon.com. Right? All right, so check it. Last week, I had the lovely Charmaine Radway was on here. That is Miss Yardcards herself was on here. This Yardcards always give me trouble for sure. Anyways, the Yardcards was up there last week. Couple weeks before that, this is the book I think I've looked for 2 shows in a row and can't find for Stacey and Smith. Time Does Not Heal. I think I had G. Cole probably a couple weeks before that again. And I'm mentioning that because if those were all good shows. If you missed those shows, they're on the YouTube channel. They're still here on my page. So if you missed those shows, go back and check them out. All right. Tonight, we're going to talk about a concept that I call the new masculinity. Now, the apology that I have in relation to that is that I cheated. I cheated by sending when I shared the event that I created into my WhatsApp chat groups, they've pretty much been having the show all day. So my WhatsApp peoples from high school, from college, they've pretty much been having their own show on this same topic the entire day so far. So a lot of the comments, a lot of the things that I'm actually gonna be talking about are comments that they actually put out there from me mentioning it to them. So I'm gonna jump right into it. So one of the persons, and I'll just say their gender. One of the persons female. Um, well, before I even get into that, let me get into the title itself, and we call it the new masculinity. We said was the concept, and the post said, "What is masculinity? What makes a man a man? Is masculinity the same today as it always was? What has changed? What's new?" Now, when I came up with the concept of the new masculinity a while back, I started writing and I wrote something about it. Now, here's what I'm going to read. And the folks that are going to join late, I am not reading this again. Anyways, it's called the new masculinity. And if the first entry of that I wrote, it says masculinity is an adjective pertaining to or characteristic of man or men having qualities traditionally ascribed to men, such as strength, boldness, manliness, machismo, virility. Now, as a boy, and this is the part that I came up with that I started writing, is that as a boy, trying to understand my place in the world, the question of masculinity or being a big man was never really asked. It was more assumed. You would often hear the phrase, "the man, a big man for your youth," referring to age, or "the real big man that," implying that a person held some status. You would also hear "man a big man," which is usually a man praising himself for some conquest or the other. The idea of conquest brings me to what these men were being assigned these masculine titles for. One consistent recurring topic was what men did in relation to women. Now, on that topic, I made several assumptions as a boy. The primary among them being that the real big man had several women. I drew this assumption because the men in my community that had multiple women far outweighed the number that had just one woman. Okay? So, and bear with me now. This is me as a boy growing up, trying to understand the world and feeling like I'm perceptive enough. I'm drawing conclusions based on the things that I see around me. And in my mind, they're right there. So why would I ask anybody? Because this is what I clearly see happening, right? So it says, my dad being married with all his children with my mom was in the minority, or was in the minority way before I was a teenager. Him being a Christian man made him almost extinct. Now, the fact that young men almost always stop coming to church midway through their teenage years led me to another assumption. The assumption being that men were only required to go to church as children, but it was okay for them to leave before they became adults. There were so many instances of this occurring, I felt that I would be stupid to have to even ask. After all, this was obvious and it was normal, right? So, what is masculinity? That's what I was trying to define from that time as a boy. What is masculinity? What makes a man a man? Is it because he has enough gal and gal in a bungle? Is it because he demonstrates his virility with every willing participant? Or is it the fact that though in the minority, it is a man who finds a woman he wants, engages her, courts her, takes time to know her, marries her, and spends the rest of his life demonstrating to her that she's all he needs? Now, those were some of the concepts I came up with as it related to what masculinity was, what is masculinity, and what it got tied to. So I put that out there. I put the what is masculinity out there. And like I said, I kind of cheated a little bit because I shot it out in some of my WhatsApp groups and I got a bunch of feedback from that earlier. So I'm going to share some of the feedback that I got as to what masculinity is. All right. This is a female and she says, interesting. As I begin to think about this, the more I think about it, the more confused I get. I think a man is the best person to define his masculinity. It's the is it his actions, or is it his genetic makeup, or is it based on his self identity? A man is someone who provides, protects, and cares for himself and his family. If no, it has definitely changed since these masculine attributes can be displayed by both men and women. The question is masculinity still relevant to define? And are men with feminine traits are less of a man? Okay, are men with feminine traits are less of a man? All right, so that's just one feedback, and like I said, that feedback came from a female. um there's some other definitions that I got. Let me see if I can find them here. I have a lot of teaching aids today, a lot of teaching aids today. Here we go. Another. This is from a male, and he says masculinity is a set of attributes, behaviors, and roles associated with men and boys. Although masculinity is largely thought of as socially constructed, research indicates that some behaviors considered masculine are biologically influenced. This is what you this is what it usually means, but I'm sure that basically some people already have some challenges with that. All right, so what is masculinity? What is masculinity? What makes a man a man? And are we in some kind of dire straits as far as maintaining that status quo? All right, now someone else has this to share, and like I said, they shared their comments ahead of time, so I'm just sharing them with you. I can't put them up on the screen, they're on my phone, I'm reading them. It says definitely has changed in referencing masculinity. He said masculinity definitely has changed. This person is saying, I was in the barbershop yesterday. After cutting a hair, the barber lamented that the guy had in weave. And he said that the church has a new book on, or the church needs a new book to teach manliness. And so does the school, right? Now, here he's saying, and what I'm hearing him saying is that masculinity has something to do with the outward appearance of the man, because he was appalled that the man that came in the barber shop had in weave, and I guess he was getting his face shaved because he had his weave in, and the barber did not perceive that as being masculine. Okay, so having in weave is not masculine. All right, well, at least from the point of view of the barber in the barber shop. Here's another person. This is also a male that shared this. He said, I would say, though, that if you were born after the 1990s, one perception of being masculine is different than now. So I asked him, what is this, to elaborate on that. And he said, in relation to mental toughness, physical endeavor, and attitude toward being the breadwinner. So he's saying that what masculinity was 30 years ago is not what masculinity is now in relation to mental toughness, physical endeavor, and attitude toward being the breadwinner. Now, if you're already listening, let me know what you think about any of these, because I have a bunch of these to go. Another male, following up on what that male said, he said it has to do with goals, how they see women, how they see God, how they see religion, their values, and family. Now, he is evolving essentially the definition of what masculinity is, or broaden the scope of what it entails. Now he's saying it's not just outward attributes, it's not just what you physically look like, it is your relationship to certain other things in society as well. All right, now we have another female came in, and she gave her opinion on it, and she said the modernized masculinity comes from the amount of power one yields, and that is determined through the position, weapons, money, and the amount of concubines you have. And the more you have, the more powerful you have, the more masculine you are, and that constitutes your identity. That's your new ID. All right. And if you're on and you're hearing these thoughts, let me know what your thoughts on are these thoughts. Well, this person is now, we're now evolving our concept or the definition of the adjective masculinity, and now we're tying it to possession, to ownership, to status, right? Now, are these things actually characteristics of masculinity, or are these just opinions? And some of these things may or may not be tied to masculinity. We dissect it a little bit more as we go through some of these comments. Now, the entitlement, this is another female elaborating, is the entitlement shan't be denied. So I'll take whether it is given willingly, life, front, dignity, material things, control equals power, which equals a macho man. So what this person is saying is that these macho men per se are these guys that are atypical, masculine, because of the power they attributed it to the power that they yield or they wield, and because of that, they pretty much go about taking whatever it is that they want. All right. Now, before I go through any other comments, I have a couple more of you on now, so I'm going to actually go back to where this all came from. We're dealing with masculinity. We're dealing with what masculinity is. And I started off by saying the whole concept of the masculinity or the new masculinity came about when I started reflecting on my own concept of masculinity, what masculinity is, where it came from, where my idea of it came from. And it goes back to my childhood. And I started writing the things that came to my mind at the time. So I'm going to briefly go back over that so y'all can catch on. So I said masculinity is an adjective pertaining to or characteristic of man or men, having qualities traditionally ascribed to men such as strength, boldness, manliness, machismo, virility. As a boy trying to understand my place in the world, the question of masculinity or being a big man was never really asked. It was more assumed. You would often hear the phrase, "Them man, they a big man for your youth," referring to age, or are the real big man that, implying that the person held some status. You would also hear man say, "Man a big man," which usually is a man praising himself for some conquest or the other. The idea of conquest brings me to the next thing, women. One consistent recurring topic was what a man did in relation to a woman. On this topic, I had several assumptions as a boy. The primary among them being that the real big man had several women. I drew this assumption because the men in my community that had multiple women far outnumbered the men that had one woman. And then I referenced my dad, who was married and had all his children with my mom, was in the minority. Him being a Christian man almost made him extinct. The fact that young men almost always stopped coming to church midway through their teenage years led me to another assumption, which was that boys don't really have to go to church beyond a certain point. It happens so much. You say this has to be what is the norm. So you felt like you had a quota to fill. Once you fill the quota, you could bounce. So this brings me to what is masculinity. What makes a man a man? Is it because he has enough gal and gal in a bungle, using Beanie Man's words? Or is it because he demonstrates his virility every opportunity he gets? Or is it somebody that actually finds someone that they love and make a life with that person? And what other attributes does this have? All right. And that's what we're working with right now for the new masculinity concept. Now, let me move on to some of the other comments that I got. I also apologize because I sent this in my WhatsApp chat group earlier and I got a barrage of comments. I'm just trying to get them all in here now for the folks that may or may not be able to join. So it says, this is the man that made this comment. He said, what role do women play? What role do women play in today's society and this new gender role, how they view men, and how are the boys and girls being raised with respect to men and how they are perceived? The same for the women. What does the culture say or how they define men. Okay, so what he's saying here is, okay, do women have a role in how men are perceived by society? Okay, is the whole cry for equality by women, the move toward equality by women, the new roles that women are playing in society, and as a result of that, how women are raising their children to respond to men, is that essentially taking away from the masculinity of the man, right? But then if it's taking away from the masculinity of man, we're going to have to first come to a kind of consensus as to what masculinity in a man actually means. And that is what we're still trying to decipher based on all the comments that we have here. And like I said, let me know your thoughts, put them in the comment, we'll address them. Now, a female followed up that comment, and she's saying, they lack far more than that. The DNA, they lack DNA and bone marrow, the core of masculinity. They have become so fragile and crave attention like little girls, so much that they have become them. And those who don't, as you bruise their ego, scold them, or deny them a new toy, they throw a tantrum like kids and shoot up the establishment. Wow, that one's pretty serious. All right, let's see. We have another comment here. We have Francis is saying, how or does a man's sexual orientation influence or interferes his masculinity? Okay. Does a man's sexual orientation influence or interferes with his masculinity? So essentially, we're saying if a man is not a straight man, essentially, where does he fit on the masculinity spectrum of things? If he is not, if he's batting for the other side. Francis, that's a good question. Let me know your comments out there. Now, and again, like I'm saying, a lot of these comments, a lot of these things that we're putting out here are contingent upon the actual definition of and the things that are included in what masculinity is. Two of the other comments that got raised were, or one comment that was rebutted was that, somebody in their definition of what masculinity is had put the ability to provide in the definition of masculinity. And then someone else rebutted by saying, hey, okay, you can't really put that in there because a lot of households are single family households headed by a female, and the female provides just fine for everybody in the household. Now, the fact that she provides, does that make her more masculine? Does that make her masculine at all? Does that ascribe masculine traits to her because she's a provider? And if it does not, is providing then a characteristic of being masculine? And can that act, or should that be used as a measure of measuring a man's masculinity? And I feel like that was a really, really good point. We're gonna jump into that a little bit here as well. All right, now this female, I'm gonna read her comment. This female addressed one of the questions that was in the title, and it says, "What makes a man a man?" Right? It says, "What makes a man is culminated in his biological, genetic endowment, as well as socialization and the environment. Modernization, technology, movement toward gender equality, changing roles of men and women have led to a gradual shift. Long story short, men have lost their moral compass, their ability to lead, their ability to provide, and have mostly become sissified." This is my creation, sissified. Women are much more independent and have the ability to make better choices. However, these choices are limited because many of our males have lost their masculinity. Now, based on the definition of masculinity by this female, she's postulating that men have lost some of their masculinity because they no longer they no longer fill several of the roles that she have ascribed to being masculine. And again, how masculinity is defined, what makes a man is going to, like I said, be determined by what we actually decide and agree on what constitutes masculinity. And most of the views that are being shared here are saying that masculinity is actually in a transition. What it looked like 30 years ago is not what it looks like today. The gender roles that were ascribed to the male or to the masculine side of the sphere is no longer the same now like it was before. All right. Let's see what else we have here. Now, this is a male, and he's saying that he's going to say it again. All these things came as a side effect of women fighting for equality, hence giving us men the go-ahead to be worthless. Now, I don't know. So this man is saying that women are a part of the problem with men not being as masculine or not filling all the masculine roles that they should, because in their struggle for equality, the side effect that came with that is now some men, I'd imagine, that never wanted to be bothered in the first place are now given a green light, to not bother. So they are allowed to sit on the sideline and be worthless, as he put it, because women are now, going for these other roles. Shannon McLeod in the place. Bless up yourself, Shannon. Now, the next time I have, and this is part one, because there's so much to cover in here. And next time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a panel, probably 3 or 4. I have to have an odd number. I probably have 3 or 5 people, just so we can always have a unanimous decision. Simone is saying men need to stop blaming women. Okay, so let's see what other rebuttals were here. So the comment she's responding to is a comment made by a male, and he's saying that all these things referring to the gender role change and men not playing the role in society they should, he said, came as a side effect of women fighting for equality, and hence giving some of the men the opportunity to be worthless. He also said that the women are the fabric of society, and if you go back to holding men accountable, then they wouldn't be the way they are today. For example, when men started wearing their clothes too tight, instead of telling them to cut it out, women said it was cute and nice, and thereby empowering them to continue the behavior. A female came back and said, let me see here. Yeah, she pretty much agreed with him. And then, let's see. I can't help but observe that so many of our males, this is a female responding. She's saying, I can't help but observe that so many of our males blame women for them being worthless. Blame women for being treated like crap. Blame women for the degradation of society and losing their moral compass. But that female here is saying, I have asked several questions. I have to ask several questions. Are men dumb? Do they have any integrity? Does their brain work? Why are they so often led by their dicks? Gents, there has to be a point where men stop and take responsibility for their own actions. It's insane to place female at the root of society's ill. Men and women are equally culpable. All right. So just like in Simone Allen Archer is saying, you can't really lay this blame at the feet of the women. And you definitely don't want to ascribe women trying to be treated equally and use that to say this is why men have lost their role in society, because women are trying to be equal. Then men just say, okay, y'all want to be equal, then we can get to sit back and chill. It doesn't work like that. All right. We had another female rebuttal here, and she's saying, don't get me wrong, there's a distinct difference between the genders. Their thinking, how they operate. It is my belief, however, that men should lead the household, not through abuse or disrespect. And at the end of the day, women need a strong man by their side. So this person is saying essentially that in order for the whole masculine, first thing she was saying is that you can't blame women for men not being men. Okay. But she's also saying women need a strong man. Now, we could go at this for a minute. We could go at this from several different angles. And because the first thing we're going to come up with is none of us or all of us are not going to agree on what masculinity is or what constitutes masculinity, irrespective of what the Webster or any other dictionary says, right? Neither are we going to agree as to how we went from what masculinity looked like 30 years ago to what masculinity looks like now. All right. Let's keep going here. She said, this is a male responding to the previous female. He says, I agree that in many cases men were missing, so not much models for the boys, not many role models for the boys. But if mothers saw value and ensured that their boys became men, then they were left to fend for themselves in society. Okay, so this gentleman here goes back one step. He's saying that a lot of the reasons for the breakdown in masculinity or men playing the masculine roles as prescribed by society is that a lot of these instances, they're not being raised by men. They don't have any examples to follow. They're not being shown what masculinity should look like, or they're being taught masculinity from a female. So they're essentially mirroring the masculinity of a female or her assimilation of it or her approximation of it. And that's what they are now projecting. Only now we have a whole society of them where they are now projecting what this new masculinity is. And it's so funny. Just like when persons come on the show and read a poem, it's the same way with this new masculinity thing. These people are taking it into a whole different direction than the way I look at it. If you look at even the flyers that I made, it kind of gives you a hint as to where I was going with it. But I see where you are going. Now, let's see what we have here. I'm not sure where she's going with this. Actually, in responding to gentlemen sticking to the fallacy that women are to be blamed, she's saying, like always, it's men's fault. If he stays, he's clingy. If he does not, he's abandoning. If he talks, he chats too much. If he argues, he's miserable. If he shows emotion, he's too emotional. If he works hard, he works too much. And if the soil is right, the plant will grow. Essentially, I think what she's getting at here is you have to figure it out with whomever you're with. You know what I mean? The gender roles and all that has to be on a case-by-case basis. All right? Let's see now. Another definition that we got here from another group said masculinity is a set of attributes, behaviors, and roles associated with men and boys. Although masculinity is largely thought of as socially constructed, research indicates that there's some biology involved there as well. All right, and I think those are all the comments that I brought to the table with me. Now, one of the points that came out that I'm going to revisit here now talks about the fact that a lot of the comments that came in initially talking about what masculinity was had provision or a male's ability to provide as a characteristic of. Okay, they all put a man's ability to provide as a characteristic of his masculinity. And one rebuttal came back that I want to stick a pin in, and it said that seeing that now in our society we have a lot of households being headed by women, the fact that women also provide and are not and the fact that they provide does not give them masculine traits, can we actually put providing um, or provision as a characteristic of masculinity? All right. From all the comments that I got, some of the things that I want to stick a pin in for this show before I wrap up here, is that whatever our definition of masculinity is, whatever side of the coin we reside on, the a man's relationship to the world, how he looks, how he carries himself, is always going to be a characteristic of masculinity. His relationship with women and how effectively he plays that role is going to be a characteristic of his masculinity. His relationship to power is going to be a characteristic of his masculinity. And then what we're going to look at more when we visit this again is the role of women, their fight for equality, and whether or not it has actually affected. We're going to look at social acceptance. All right, Miss Francis, appreciate you checking in. I know you're on vacation. I would say Francis from New York, but I don't know where you're at. All right, could it be that men have not lost anything, or women are not to be blamed? Could it be that evolution has caused the concept of masculinity to be obsolete? Could it be that evolution has caused what we perceive masculinity to be to just become obsolete? So when masculine or masculinity was defined as the person who would cut the most sugar cane for the day, unfortunately, that's what our history looked like one time, or the man who could do the most physical work at the time, or certain outward physical characteristics. That's the question of the day. Could it be that this has nothing to do, well, not wholly to do with any of the other points that we put out? Could it be just a matter of evolution, just like everything else is evolving? Just like a couple of years ago, if we had thought that so many people working from home, we put that out there, we would have said that was impossible. But evolution has brought us here. Now I can do just about anything or get just about anything I want from my phone. And not so long ago, we had flip phones. We had Razor phones, Motorola Razor phones, and Nokias, the little Nokias. And evolution has now brought us into this new place. Could it be that it is evolution that has confused these gender roles to where now we're arguing about what masculinity is, and it's in an attempt to hold on to what our initial definition of what masculinity was, that we are now having these issues with what masculinity should look like. We have another comment here. It says, can men and women both play vital roles without any expectations or definition of those roles? But here's, I think it's the, I'm going to coin this term here now. Well, not the term really, but I think it's the good old days concept. I think it's the good old days idea lingering here, where we all have these fond memories of how things used to be, and how men used to be versus how they are now, or how men used to dress, or what they used to look like. Back in the day, everybody that came up where I came up, you had a tailor. Your tailor was like your next of kin. Your tailor and your barber was like your next of kin. Every so often you'd go to your barber. Every so often you'd go to your tailor. You'd get something made, but one time it was the straight foot pants, then the big foot pants, then the narrow foot pants. But things were always changing. They were evolving. Trends change, styles change, and it changed. And how men look in general, how they dress. Now, mind you, have some old school cats that just gonna be, Wallaby Clark shoes and tailored suit made by their tailor all day long. but you have the other guys that kind of change with the trend. So is it just that what male gender roles, what masculinity look like has just now evolved into something else? And because it doesn't look now like what it looked like before, this is why we're grappling with, it's changed for the worse. It's not what it used to be, because we're really just wishing for the good old days as to what masculinity was or looked like. All right. And I believe those are the points I'm going to leave with y'all today for the new masculinity. However, this is the Evening People Show, and I have to read a poem. I have no idea what I'm going to read. How about I just open the book and whichever poem comes, I read it. Let's do that. Voila. That poem is too long. Let's try it again. Voila. Okay. What? Okay, we're going to read Reflections. We're going to read Reflections. And you know what? The book opened to the page at transitioning because so many people have done transitions. But the one on the other side of it is Reflections. Delorn, what was sweet? Oh, yeah, laugh of that. Well, yeah, LOL over there. We're going to read Reflections. It is on page 60 of the book. It sounds spicy. Let's see if it's fit for the ear. It says, the stroking, the sucking your touch. Thinking, oh, I want you so much. The words floating, maybe spinning. I distinctly remember some biting. I remember the first moan upon contact. As you're, okay, I can't read this on the air. Okay, yeah, Delon, you see that? Do you see that? The man said, mercy, if you had heard the next line, they'd have banned me. Okay, let's not read that. Let's just read something. Okay, here's gray areas. I'm going to read gray areas because I like gray areas. I can't imagine. I don't think I've ever done gray areas on the show with a guest before. Next guest, you don't need to do gray areas. I'm going to read gray areas. That's number 18 in the book. It says, and it depends on what print of the book you have, actually. I found it out the other day that Amazon sometimes prints it differently and the pages sequence differently. But it's 18 in my book, and it's called Gray Areas. It says, when what you know meets what could have been. When you know you shouldn't, yet you jump right in. Where the black meets the white, but then not quite. When inhibitions seem to disappear, but just for the night. When the brain says no, but the body says yes. When you wake up, can't remember, looking around for evidence of sex. When the rules are there, but not quite defined. When it's all up in the air, just waiting on time. When you're not sure if you're coming or going, and it all stands still. When you say you won't, but then maybe you will. When what you just did for the last time was the third last time, when you'll never think of it again, yet it's on your mind. When the warning lights are flashing, still you tiptoe in. When you stop and say a prayer just before you sin. When you hear your mouth speak of things your brain can't decide. When you don't stop yourself slipping, though you don't want to slide. When your heart's not hearing what your brain is saying and you're weak in the knees. When he's bad for you and you know it, still you cherish moments like these. And that was Gray Areas from the Book of Confrontation, written in 2012. It buddy. All right, Miss Katie Bosch, I see you check again. You're late. I want to tell you, say I've done the show, done. You have to go rewind and watch it on your own time. And for any non-English, for any non-patois speakers that are viewing, I apologize. I can translate it for you later, read the fine print. All right, peoples, that's the ball game. That was episode 1 in the new masculinity. I really just went through a bunch of comments that I had received earlier via WhatsApp messages. Next time I do the new masculinity, I'm gonna have about 3 or 5 guests on here, and we're gonna give it a really good shake. All right. But I thank y'all for joining earlier on at the beginning of the show. I was bigging up the people in the United Arab Emirates. Like I say, I realize I have some viewers over there. The Amazon says some books sell over Arab Emirates. Bless up for yourself over United Arab Emirates. You don't know things yet. All of the fear of them country that. All right. If you joined late, Katie, may I drop word for you? If you joined late, be sure to go back and check it out, folks. As usual, thank you for your support of the Martin Matthews Project. Thank you for watching the Evening People Show. You don't know all the things yet. It's time to be out, and we just out. Peace.